watching All 24 News World News Program. Next up are the headlines. Gaza faces twin crises, deadly storms and a shaky truce, while Algeria reaffirms strong support for Palestinian rights at the United Nations. Morocco pushes normalization with Zionist arms shipments in its ports and military funding, while Safi floods worsen under government neglect. Also on News Tonight, Algeria urges balanced global response to rise in migration, builds economic ties with Chad, and promotes border universities to drive joint development with Tunisia. And later on, Washington sees hope for a Ukraine ceasefire. Europe backs an international security force, while Moscow demands new Russian territories and doubts EU involvement in Berlin talks. The details are straight ahead. Welcome back. Leading our news tonight in Gaza, Palestinian health officials report one person was killed in an airstrike by the Zionist occupation forces Tuesday in the southern Rafah area. Meanwhile, airstrikes by the occupation continue despite a ceasefire. A house previously damaged by shelling collapsed west of Gaza City, killing one Palestinian and injuring others. Rescue teams say heavy rains caused the collapse. The health ministry in Gaza states that since the ceasefire began, violations by the occupation have led to more than 1,027 Palestinian fatalities. The overall death toll since October 7, 2023 is now reported at 70,667, with 170,151 wounded.
A short while ago, a house built prior to official registration collapsed within this area, resulting in the recovery of 3 martyrs from beneath the rubble, in addition to the transfer of several injured individuals. We stress that this house is neither the first nor will it be the last, as dozens of remaining houses continue to pose a serious threat to the lives of residents. Unfortunately, we are currently facing significant difficulties in dealing with such collapses due to limited capabilities and the lack of necessary equipment to handle houses that are at risk of collapse and those threatened with total structural failure.
On the political front, a Hamas leader is holding the occupation fully responsible for violations aimed at undermining the ceasefire. Ghazi Hamad stated Tuesday that 813 breaches of the agreement have been documented. He says these include 392 bombing operations, resulting in approximately 400 Palestinian fatalities and the destruction of 145 homes.
Since
the ceasefire came into effect, around 400 people have been killed, more than 95% of them civilians. The Zionist occupying forces are deliberately targeting innocent civilians, particularly women and children. Since the agreement, there have been 392 strikes, more than 46 attempts to violate the design yellow line, and approximately 229 incidents of live fire directed at civilians.
Algeria's permanent representative to the United Nations, Ammar Benjama, urged the guarantors of the Gaza ceasefire to uphold their responsibilities by compelling the Zionist occupation to fully and immediately comply with its commitments. Addressing the Security Council on the situation in the Middle East, including the Palestinian issue, Benjama condemned the continued bombardment of the Gaza Strip, which has killed at least 356 Palestinians since the ceasefire took effect.
Gaza needs protection. Despite the ceasefire endorsed by Resolution 2803, catastrophe persists. Israel's genocidal war on Gaza continue unabated. And we therefore call upon the guarantors of the ceasefire. Yes, the guarantors of the ceasefire. To uphold their responsibility, to have the courage to uphold their responsibilities, not rhetorically, but practically, not selectively, but fully.
Heavy rains have flooded the streets of Gaza City refugee camps and parts of a Shifa hospital. This worsens the severe damage to infrastructure from 2 years of aggression against the Strip. Civil defense teams say they are struggling with the storm's effects. They report being hampered by restrictions and closed crossings, which block the delivery of vital aid and shelter for hundreds of thousands of displaced people.
This winter we were forced to leave because of extreme hardship. We have young children and we left our homes behind. As you can see, this is Palestine. We are sleeping on the ground in unnatural conditions, without real shelter, with innocent young children. These are our few belongings and our children's belongings. Inside the tent where we are currently living, we have been reduced to begging in order to survive.
And speaking of the humanitarian crisis in the Gaza Strip, tens of thousands of displaced people and Palestinians in Gaza face winter storms amid ongoing Zionist attacks. In Beit Lahia, heavy rain collapsed homes, trapping residents, while in Western Gaza City, children wade through flooded tents. For many, the storm worsens the effects of war, blockade, and a failing humanitarian system. Sofian Kanturi with the details now.
Tens of thousands of displaced Palestinians in Gaza are facing a new threat: deadly winter storms, as the Zionist aggression continues to devastate the Strip. In northern Gaza, civil defense teams search through the rubble of collapsed homes in Bir Najah, area of Beit Lahia, after heavy rain and thunderstorms caused tractors to give way, trapping residents underneath.
Around 4:30 in the morning, we were still asleep when we were told to awake by a terrible vibration. To our shock, we discovered that our neighbor's house completely collapsed, burying them under the debris.
With proper housing unavailable, many displaced families have sought refuge in partially destroyed buildings to escape the cold. In makeshift camps in western Gaza City, adults were seen removing muddy water from flooded tents, while children walk barefoot through contaminated water.
Look at the flooded ground. We are sleeping in water and the tents are leaking from above. These tents are thin, old and can't keep the rain out.
For Gaza's displaced population, the storm is more than a weather emergency. It is not a consequence of war, blockade, and collapsing humanitarian system.
In the occupied West Bank now, occupation forces launched raids and arrests Tuesday across several towns. The Palestinian Information Center reports 20 Palestinians were arrested, including a woman, a child, and 2 recently released prisoners, during operations in Nablus, Ramallah, Tulkaram, and Beit Lahm. Meanwhile, Algeria's UN ambassador, Amar Benjama, warned that settlement activity there has reached unprecedented levels. He said that settler attacks have become routine under international silence and impunity.
As Algeria concludes its term in the Security Council, it reiterates again and again, as affirmed by the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, and I quote, Algeria will remain faithful to its commitment in support of our brothers and sisters in occupied Palestine. Algeria will spare no effort in defending their legitimate rights until full sovereignty is restored and a free, independent state of Palestine is established.
The International Court or Criminal Court said Monday has rejected an appeal by the Zionist occupation challenging the court's jurisdiction over crimes committed during the aggression on Gaza. The ICC recalled that it issued arrest warrants in November 2024 for Benjamin Netanyahu and former so-called Zionist defense minister Yoav Gallant, accusing them of war crimes and crimes against humanity.
Resistance Army, hereinafter LRA.
The UN General Assembly voted Monday by a large majority to reaffirm the Palestinian people's right to self-determination. The resolution passed with 164 votes in favor, condemning practices of the Zionist occupation that deny Palestinians dignity and statehood. In a separate vote for the same day, the Assembly also affirmed Palestinian sovereignty over natural resources in the occupied territories, including East al-Quds. That resolution passed with 156 votes in favor, calling on the occupation to end exploitation and recognizing Palestinians' right to compensation. Algeria's UN Permanent Representative Ammar Benjama reaffirmed Algeria's steadfast support for the Palestinian people in their fight for their legitimate rights and the establishment of a free and independent state. Addressing the Security Council, where Algeria serves as an elected member, Benjama highlighted the country's continued efforts to stand with Palestinians and address the injustices they face.
Settlers' terrorism has become a daily occurrence, averaging 5 incidents a day throughout this year. In the few next days, 100 homes, Palestinian homes, are planned to be demolished. This is not an anomaly. It is not a deviation. It is the routine of occupation. This council did nothing. Had such violations unfolded elsewhere, this chamber would have moved swiftly. Sanctions imposed, accountability mechanism activated, perpetrators named and restrained.
The port of Tangier in Morocco is set to receive 3 cargo ships carrying F-35 fighter jet wings destined for the Zionist entity. According to the Moroccan BDS movement, the Maersk Normanna arrives Tuesday, followed by the Maersk Chicago on the 22nd and the Maersk Norfolk on the 30th, before heading to the occupied port of Haifa, highlighting continued Makhzen complicity in arming the occupation. The Moroccan Front for the Support of Palestine and Against Normalization accused the Makhzen of funding Zionist military industries amid ongoing aggression against Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. At a Tuesday's press conference, Front member Muhammad al-Jahri said Rabat signed major military deals with the occupation this year, some exceeding $300 million, calling it direct complicity in the bloodshed of the Palestinian people.
The Moroccan regime has strengthened its military cooperation with the Zionist entity through various deals and agreements, to the point that the Zionist entity became Morocco's 3rd largest arms supplier after the United States and France. Morocco is the only country in our region with this distinction. In 2025, we note that Morocco concluded deals with the Zionist entity worth between 150 and 200 million euros, while other sources indicate 370 million euros.
The National Action Group for Palestine announced Tuesday it will hold a popular march next Saturday in Tangier to protest Zionist infiltration and show support for Palestine. The group said the march is part of a growing movement against Zionist Moroccan normalization, which it says undermines state institutions and reaffirmed public opposition ahead of the 5th anniversary of the controversial normalization agreement. The death toll from floods that hit the Moroccan city of Safi Sunday night has risen to 38, according to preliminary reports. Local media said body of a missing woman was recovered Tuesday. Residents criticized the lack of official assistance and called on NGOs for urgent aid for hundreds of affected families. In Spain, the General Union of Workers has reaffirmed its solidarity with the Sahrawi people's struggle for self-determination. During a solidarity event, union spokesperson Ayala Puente stated that defending the cause of Western Sahara is a defense of dignity and human rights.
The conflict in Western Sahara is not merely a political issue. It is fundamentally a matter of law. It concerns strict international human rights and humanitarian law. What is taking place constitutes a crime against humanity under the jurisdiction of the International Criminal Court.
Switching focus to a different news story now. In Geneva, Algeria has reaffirmed its commitment to international solidarity and sharing the responsibility for refugees. During a global refugee forum meeting, the Secretary General of Algeria's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Lounes Magraman, highlighted current challenges. He pointed to worsening humanitarian crises, a rising number of forcibly displaced people, and a decline in funding that threatens enormous groups or gaps.
On behalf of my delegation, I'm pleased to extend my sincere gratitude to the countries that have convened this meeting, dedicated to reviewing the progress achieved in implementing the commitments made at the Global Refugee Forum. We also express our deep appreciation to the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, UNHCR, and the Government of Switzerland for their warm hospitality and excellent organization. Ladies and gentlemen, our meeting today takes place in a particularly sensitive international context where humanitarian, security, and economic crises are increasingly intertwined, threatening the sustainability of the essential services upon which the lives and dignity of refugees depend. In the face of this reality, Algeria reaffirms its strong commitment to the principles of burden and responsibility sharing, which lie at the heart of the Global Compact on Refugees.
Meanwhile, the Secretary General of Algeria's Foreign Ministry stressed tackling the root causes of forced displacement, including conflicts and colonialism, and called for a balanced approach combining humanitarian aid, protection, and sustainable solutions.
Regarding the third commitment, which focuses on addressing the root causes of displacement through advocacy aimed at achieving a sustainable balance between assistance, protection, and durable solutions, Algeria, as a non-permanent member of the Security Council, reaffirms its commitment to defending just humanitarian causes, foremost among them the Palestinian and Sahrawi refugee situations. Algeria also reiterates the legal and moral responsibility of the international community to address refugee situations stemming from occupation and unresolved conflicts.
Chadian Minister of Petroleum and Mines Ndoli Nuji Alex Naimbai has begun a 3-day working visit to Algeria. The visit, following a trip by Chad's president to Algeria last September, aims to strengthen cooperation in the hydrocarbons and mining sectors. Algerian Minister Mohamed Arqab stated Algeria's commitment to a strategic partnership, discussing potential involvement by the state energy companies on a track in Chad's energy sector, including exploration and infrastructure. The Chadian minister praised the relations between the two nations and expressed Chad's desire to benefit from Algeria's expertise in developing its own energy and mining industries.
تطرقنا الآن لعدة مسائل هامة.
We discussed several important issues related to strengthening relations between Algeria and Chad, particularly the historical ties between the two countries, especially in the fields of hydrocarbons and mining. In this context, we focused extensively on ways to enhance cooperation in this sector and on providing all Algerian capacities and expertise that would enable our brothers in Chad to establish and develop a hydrocarbons industry.
من إنشاء صناعة في مجال المحروقات.
The 7th Algerian-Tunisian Border Universities Forum 5+5 opened Tuesday in Soukharas province. The two-day event focuses on digital age higher education, research cooperation, student and faculty exchanges, and linking science with economic development. Algerian Higher Education Minister Kamal Badari said it reflects both countries' commitment to supporting border universities and fostering regional scientific collaboration.
This meeting reflects the directives of the two countries' leaders, His Excellency President Abdelmajid Tebboune and His Excellency President Kais Saied, aimed at making university cooperation a central and effective driver of development while strengthening the bonds between the two brotherly peoples. Particular emphasis is placed on border regions, which are envisioned as genuine spaces for cooperation, partnership, and joint action. This approach also seeks to contribute to building a leading university, one that drives development and stands at the heart of the renaissance of both nations.
More regional news. Libya's government of national unity has affirmed its commitment to the UN-sponsored political process for facilitating elections. In a statement, the government welcomed the launch of a structured dialogue by the UN mission in Libya, noting what it called a positive breakthrough from the previous stalemate. It said this reflects a clear shift in approach toward a political solution. Elsewhere in Africa, fighting in eastern Congo has forced tens of thousands to flee, many crossing into Burundi. Refugees arriving say conditions are hard-hitting, and aid agencies warn the crisis could get worse. Karim Mustafa reports now.
Since early December, South Kivu province has seen the most intense fighting eastern Congo has faced in months. The renewed violence has forced tens of thousands of people to flee inside Congo and across the border into Burundi. So far, around 64,000 refugees have arrived in Burundi, according to the UN Refugee Agency.
This is simply because there has been very serious fighting on the Congolese side. It started in Kamanyola, and we saw many people crossing over to seek safety in Burundi. They came from Sanj, but also from Katogota. As you can see, there are many children, elderly people, sick people, and people who have been injured by everything that has happened in Congo. So the UNHCR and the entire United Nations system in Burundi are trying to organize temporary assistance.
In January, M23 launched a rapid offensive, capturing eastern Congo's two largest cities. The fighting has killed thousands, and hundreds of thousands more have been displaced from their homes. Now, with displacement expected to keep rising in the days ahead, refugees who escaped the violence say conditions are becoming increasingly desperate.
The conditions here were very difficult. We have no sanitary facilities, we have no food or firewood. We also have no water, so it's impossible to wash. We spend the night under the stars, sleeping on the ground. For example, yesterday we slept in the rain. For now, we still haven't eaten, we are hungry. We fled because of the bombs. As we fled, we saw dead people, others who had lost their feet or hands. Some had their legs cut off, all along the road, until we arrived here.
It's worth noting that M23 entered Uvira on the border with Burundi just days after the President of Congo and Rwanda signed a peace agreement in Washington.
Moving on to another global news story, and as Berlin hosted high-stakes peace talks this week, Ukraine found itself squeezed between U.S. pressure to compromise, Russia's entrenched territorial ambitions, and a divided Europe struggling to defend its own vision of peace. Yasin Rukti has more in this report now.
Hopes for an end to the nearly 4-year war in Ukraine grow on Monday, as peace talks in Berlin brought cautious signs of progress, but also exposed deep divisions over territory and security guarantees. US President Donald Trump said an agreement to end the war was closer than ever, following what he called productive discussions.
We had a very good conversation 1 hour ago with the European leaders, many of them involving the war with Russia and Ukraine. We had a long discussion, and things are seemingly going well, but we've been saying that for a long time, and it's a difficult one. And I think we're closer now, and they will tell you that they're closer now. We had numerous conversations with President Putin of Russia, and I think we're closer now than we have been ever. And we'll see what we can do. We want to save a lot of lives.
For his part, Zelensky says Ukraine wants clear, legally binding guarantees. First, only then he said Kyiv might drop NATO ambitions in exchange for those guarantees.
All pressure on Russia must remain in place as long as occupation of our land continue. Russia must feel that it is a criminal and face consequences for that as long as our people remain in Russian captivity, and until the Ukrainian children abducted by Russia are brought home. Sanctions must limit Russia until it shows respect for peaceful life and the rights of its neighbors.
But Moscow's line hasn't changed. Russia's deputy foreign minister says it won't give up Donbass, Crimea or the SWAT Moscow calls Novorossiya. That's the big immovable rock in these talks. In addition, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov voiced criticism over Europe's role, saying it does not bode well for acceptance.
The question now is whether we, as President Donald Trump says, will reach a deal or not. Our stance is well known. It is consistent and transparent. It is clear to Americans. Generally speaking, it is clear to Ukrainians too. We're confident about it. If the Ukrainians seek to substitute the deal with a momentary and non-viable options, we are hardly ready to be a part of it. We want peace. We don't want a truce to give Ukraine a breathing space and prepare for a continuation of the war. We want to stop this war, achieve our goals, secure our interests, and guarantee peace in Europe for the future. That's what we want.
European leaders have floated a European-led multinational force, plus ideas on rebuilding and compensation, but Europe isn't totally united on certain details, as Poland's Donald Tusk warned that peace might come only through painful territorial concessions. Another point of contention included who pays and how frozen Russian assets are used. Yet the German Chancellor Friedrich Merz still hailed the Berlin talks as an opportunity for a genuine peace process.
The legal and material guarantees that the US has put on the table here in Berlin are truly remarkable. This is a very important step forward, which I very much welcome. We have explained our positions to each other in detail in very confidential meetings, and we have listened carefully to each other. I hope that we will make further progress this evening and continue to close ranks between Ukraine, the United States of America and Europe. At the same time, we want to persuade Moscow to stop wasting time and move towards a ceasefire. That is why we Europeans will continue to increase the pressure on Russia.
Between Washington's pressure, Moscow's defiance and Europe's divisions, Ukraine now stands at a crossroads, facing a fragile path to peace that could redefine the continent's balance of power. And while diplomats meet, the fighting and the civilian pain continues. Southern regions saw fresh strikes and big power cuts, leaving hundreds of thousands without electricity.
In the same context, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky called Tuesday for frozen Russian assets to be released to Kyiv by next year. He said the funds would support Ukraine's reconstruction, noting that the war damages already exceed the 45 billion euros in frozen Russian assets by 3 times. Senior European officials and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky agreed Tuesday to set up an international body to decide on tens of billions in war compensation for Ukraine. Dutch Prime Minister Dick Schoof said the Hague-based International Claims Commission for Ukraine, backed by 35 countries, will assess claims submitted to the Register of Damages, which already has over 80,000 fillings. Britain has pledged $805 million to support Ukraine's air defense capabilities. British Defense Minister John Haley confirmed the funding on Tuesday, stating the investment is crucial for deterring Russian attacks. Moving on to the war in Sudan. On Tuesday, Sudan's Rapid Support Forces shelled Rahat in North Kordofan and Deling in the south, including strikes by drones on key roads and surrounding areas, leaving one injured. The UN said at least 104 civilians, including 43 children, have died in Kordofan drone attacks since December 4. UN Rights Chief Volker Turk expressed concern over the escalating clashes between the Sudanese army and the Rapid Support Forces. And before we wrap up, here is more international news stories in the News in Brief with Salma Kantouri. With Salma Nassib, sorry.
Five soldiers were killed in a suicide bombing that targeted a military site in northeastern Nigeria near the border with Cameroon. AFP, citing local security and defense sources, reported that the attack took place on Sunday, targeting a military position in Borno State. Medical authorities, for their part, in the area, confirmed that 5 soldiers' bodies were counted. Iraq's Ministry of Transport announced on Tuesday the landing of the first European aircraft at Baghdad International Airport after a 35-year suspension. In a statement carried by Iraqi news agency, the ministry said that the Baghdad-Athens route has been launched on a regular schedule with 2 flights per week, describing this as the culmination of efforts to meet operational, technical and security requirements and to enhance the readiness of the country's airport infrastructure in line with standards adopted at European airports. The European Parliament on Tuesday approved stricter controls and safeguard measures on agricultural imports linked to a potential trade deal with the Mercosur bloc. It lowered the threshold for triggering safeguards to 5% of the average import volume over 3 years and called for faster investigations and enforcement if Mercosur products fail to meet EU production and sustainability standards. Eight people were killed on Monday in a U.S. military attack on ships in international waters of the Pacific Ocean allegedly involved in drug trafficking. The U.S. military announced on X that strikes targeted 3 ships in international waters of the Pacific, claiming they were operated by groups classified as terrorist organizations and were following known drug trafficking routes in the Eastern Pacific.
And that brings us to the end of our news. Thank you for tuning in. Have a great night.